5 years after twins Lila and Jonah vanished without a trace from their grandparents' rain-soaked farmhouse, a routine plumbing job unearths a locket jammed deep in the rusted pipes, engraved with a rabbit and containing a single word, help. What happened that stormy night? And why does the house still feel like it's hiding something? The metallic clang of a wrench striking pipe echoed through the silent kitchen. Caleb Murray wiped sweat from his brow as he lay beneath the ancient sink, his flashlight illuminating corroded copper pipes. Something had been clogging this drain for years, something more stubborn than the usual buildup of grease and food particles. "Almost got it," he muttered, though no one was there to hear. His wrench connected with a solid object wedged in the bend of the pipe. What the hell? With careful fingers, he extracted something small and metallic, coated in years of grime and corrosion. Sitting up beneath the sink, he wiped away the filth with his thumb, revealing a tarnished silver locket. Ornate engravings emerged, a delicate rabbit with one ear slightly bent. Curiosity overtook him. The clasp resisted at first, then yielded with a soft click. Inside lay a small photograph of two children, identical twins with bright eyes and matching smiles. Beside it, a tiny folded scrap of paper. Caleb carefully unfolded it, revealing a single word scrawled in a child's handwriting, help. His blood ran cold. Everyone in Millbrook knew about the Henderson twins, 8-year-old Lila and Jonah, who vanished without a trace from this very house 5 years ago. Their disappearance had shaken the small town to its core, leaving only questions that faded with time. Until now. What the Henderson twins couldn't tell us in life, they had finally whispered through the pipes of their grandparents' house. The farmhouse at the edge of Oakwood Forest had always seemed out of place, too large, too old, too isolated from the rest of Millbrook. Its weathered clapboards and sagging porch spoke of decades past, while the surrounding forest pressed against its boundaries as if trying to reclaim the land. Rain had been falling for 3 straight days when Diana and Robert Henderson dropped their children off at the farmhouse. The summer of 2017 was meant to be a reprieve for the twins while their parents sought counseling for their failing marriage. 8-year-olds Lila and Jonah tumbled from the car, matching blue backpacks bobbing as they raced up the porch steps. "Remember, it's just for the summer," Diana had told them, her forced smile betraying the uncertainty they all felt. "Be good for Grandma Ruth and Grandpa Henry." Ruth Henderson, a thin woman of 68 with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, greeted them with stiff hugs and precise instructions. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. No exceptions. Her life ran on schedules and rituals as predictable as the antique grandfather clock that dominated the entryway. Henry Henderson, 72, and perpetually clad in faded overalls, was more reserved, his weathered hands constantly occupied with some repair or another. The old house demanded constant attention, especially the plumbing system that rattled and groaned like a living entity. "This place has stood for 150 years, he'd tell the twins as he tinkered with pipes or floorboards, built to last, but needs looking after. The twins shared the attic bedroom with its sloped ceiling and dormer window that overlooked the forest. Between their twin beds sat a small nightstand where they placed their most treasured possession, a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Flopsy, worn from years of love, one ear perpetually bent from Jonah's habit of tugging on it when nervous. Lila was the observer, quiet, watchful, noticing details others missed. She cataloged the house's creaks and groans, the way certain floorboards announced visitors, how the light filtered differently through each dusty window. Jonah was her opposite, boisterous, always moving, his laughter echoing through the high-ceilinged rooms. He found adventure in every corner, imagining pirates in the basement and explorers in the attic. "Stay close to the house," Henry warned them repeatedly. "That forest isn't safe for wandering. It harbors more than just shadows." The twins nodded solemnly, though Jonah's eyes gleamed with the forbidden allure of the dense woods. Lila simply watched her grandfather, noting how his gaze lingered on the tree line, as if expecting something to emerge. On August 15, 2017, the summer storm intensified. Lightning cracked the sky in brilliant flashes, illuminating the twins' bedroom in harsh white light. Thunder followed, so powerful it rattled the windows in their frames. Ruth tucked them in that night, her usual rigid demeanor softened slightly. "Say your prayers," she instructed, lighting the small lamp on their nightstand. "Leave the door open a crack for light." The twins nodded, clutching Mr. Flopsy between them as Ruth's footsteps faded down the creaking stairs. Through the gap in the door, they could hear their grandparents' muted conversation from the kitchen below. "Getting worse," Henry's voice drifted up. "Taking your medication? Don't need it." Ruth's reply was sharper. "Perfectly fine." Lightning flashed again, casting strange shadows across the bedroom walls. In the momentary illumination, Lila thought she saw a figure standing in the corner, tall and unnaturally still. She blinked, and it vanished with the light. "Jonah," she whispered, "did you see that?" But her brother had already fallen asleep, one hand clutching Mr. Flopsy's good ear. Morning brought an eerie silence. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean yet somehow more foreboding. Ruth's gentle knock on the twins' door went unanswered. When she pushed it open, her scream shattered the morning stillness. The beds were empty. The window stood unlatched, rain-soaked wind billowing the curtains. On the floor lay Mr. Flopsy, his remaining good ear now torn, stuffing spilling out like secrets too heavy to contain. Henry found his wife collapsed beside the empty beds, trembling hands clutching the stuffed rabbit. "They're gone," she whispered. "They're gone." If you enjoy fictional mysteries like this one, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Let's uncover the truth together. The hours following the twins' disappearance unfolded in a blur of frantic activity. Henry plunged into the forest, calling their names until his voice grew hoarse. Neighbors joined the search, forming lines that swept through the underbrush as rain began falling again, washing away whatever tracks might have remained. Sheriff Dale Conway arrived with deputies and search dogs, their barking echoing through the trees as they tried to pick up a scent. The dogs grew agitated near the forest's edge, but couldn't establish a trail. The storm had erased too much. "Tell me again what you heard last night," Conway asked Ruth, who sat rigid at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. "Nothing unusual. I tucked them in at 9, said their prayers, left the door open as they like it." Her voice was mechanical, her eyes fixed on something distant. "They were just gone this morning." Henry paced behind her, his weathered face creased with worry. "The window was always locked. I check it every night. Been doing it for years." Conway nodded, writing in his notepad. "And neither of you heard anything during the night? The window being opened? Footsteps?" "The storm was loud," Henry replied. "Thunder all night. Could have drowned out anything else." By nightfall, the search expanded to include state police and volunteers from neighboring towns. Helicopters swept searchlights across the dense canopy of trees, illuminating nothing but endless green. Camera crews arrived from Portland, broadcasting the twins' school photos to households across Maine. 3 days into the search, Mrs. Abernathy, who lived half a mile down the road, came forward with new information. "I saw a black van," she told Sheriff Conway, her voice quavering. "Driving slow past the Henderson place around midnight, headlights dimmed to almost nothing. Thought it strange, given the storm." This lead shifted the investigation. Roadblocks were established, vehicle registrations checked. Meanwhile, forensic technicians examined the twins' bedroom, finding small, muddy footprints on the windowsill. Footprints too large for 8-year-olds, yet too small for an adult. "Could be teenagers," one technician suggested, or the prints were deliberately made to confuse us. As weeks passed with no solid leads, the search gradually wound down. The farmhouse became unnaturally quiet. Ruth moved through her days like a ghost, abandoning her strict schedules. Meals went unprepared. The garden she once tended with obsessive precision grew wild and unruly. Henry retreated to the basement, spending hours maintaining the house's ancient plumbing system. The hollow clanging of his wrench against pipes became a constant soundtrack, methodical, relentless, as if the answers might be found in those dark, twisting tunnels. Diana and Robert Henderson's marriage, already fragile, shattered under the weight of their loss. Accusations flew. Blame shifted between them like a poisonous cloud. "We never should have left them there," Diana sobbed during one of their final arguments. "That house always felt wrong." "They're your parents," Robert shot back. "You were the one who insisted." Their divorce was finalized 1 year after the twins' disappearance. Diana moved to Boston, unable to bear the constant reminders in Millbrook. Robert stayed, taking a small apartment downtown, holding on to hope that his children might someday return. The police file remained open but inactive. Sheriff Conway retired 2 years later, handing the unsolved case to his successor with a warning: "The Henderson case will haunt you." Something about it never added up. The farmhouse itself became the subject of local legend. Children dared each other to approach its boundaries. Teenagers spread rumors of ghosts seen in the attic window. The story of the Henderson twins transformed into Millbrook's own haunting mystery, a tale told around campfires, embellished with each retelling. 5 years passed. The farmhouse grew more dilapidated, its paint peeling, shutters hanging askew. Ruth rarely left its confines anymore. Henry maintained the property through sheer force of will, though his back had begun to stoop and his hands trembled with age. In August 2022, exactly 5 years after the twins' disappearance, the kitchen sink stopped draining entirely. After attempting to fix it himself for days, Henry finally called a plumber. "Can't seem to clear it," he explained to the dispatcher. "Needs professional attention." The following morning, Caleb Murray arrived at the farmhouse. At 26, he was relatively new to Millbrook, having moved there 3 years earlier. He knew about the Henderson twins, of course, everyone did, but had never been inside the infamous farmhouse. "Morning, Mr. Henderson," he greeted Henry, who stood watching from the porch. "Heard you've got a stubborn clog." Henry nodded, leading him inside. "Kitchen sink? Been getting worse for years." The kitchen was clean, but dated, with yellowed linoleum and appliances from the 1980s. Ruth sat at the table, staring out the window toward the forest. She didn't acknowledge Caleb's presence. "Mrs. Henderson," Caleb nodded politely, receiving no response. "Don't mind her," Henry murmured. "She has her good days and bad days. Today's not good." Caleb set to work, laying out his tools beneath the sink. The pipes were old but well-maintained, evidence of Henry's constant attention. The clog, however, was located in a bend deep within the wall. "This might take some time," Caleb explained. "Something's really stuck in there." Henry hovered nearby, watching with unusual intensity. "Take whatever time you need, just fix it." For nearly an hour, Caleb worked at the obstruction, trying various tools. Finally, he felt something shift. "I think I've got it," he called out, right before his wrench struck metal. "Wait, there's something in here, something solid." When he extracted the silver locket, the kitchen fell into profound silence. Henry stared at the object as if seeing a ghost. From the table, Ruth suddenly focused, her vacant expression sharpening. "What is that?" she asked, her voice stronger than expected. "What did you find?" Caleb wiped away the grime, revealing the rabbit engraving. "It's a locket," he said before carefully opening it to discover the photograph and note. Henry's face drained of color. "Where did you find that?" "In the pipe," Caleb replied, confused by the old man's reaction. "It must have been stuck there for years." Ruth rose from her chair, moving with surprising swiftness. "Let me see it," she demanded, snatching the locket from Caleb's hand. She stared at the photograph, then at the scrap of paper with its single pleading word. "Help," she read aloud, her voice breaking. Then something changed in her eyes, a clarity appearing through the fog of her deteriorated mental state. "They're still hiding," she whispered. "All this time." Henry moved quickly, taking the locket from Ruth's trembling fingers. "I think you should go," he told Caleb, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. But Caleb had recognized the children in the photograph. "Those are the Henderson twins," he said. "Shouldn't we call the police?" Ruth's sudden laugh was brittle, edging toward hysteria. "The police?" They never understood, never looked in the right places. Henry placed a firm hand on Ruth's shoulder. "That's enough," he said quietly, before turning back to Caleb. "How much do I owe you for the repair?" Caleb hesitated, torn between professional courtesy and moral obligation. I think Sheriff Bailey should see this. It could be important." "It's just an old locket," Henry insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Probably fell down the drain years ago, nothing to do with the twins." But Ruth was shaking her head, her moment of lucidity continuing. "They were never lost," she said. "They were taken. By the forest, by its friends." That evening, despite Henry's objections, Caleb brought the locket to Sheriff Melissa Bailey. Within hours, the cold case was officially reopened, and the old farmhouse once again became the center of Millbrook's attention. What do you think happened to Lila and Jonah? Share your theories below. Sheriff Bailey stood in the twins' bedroom, unchanged since that stormy night 5 years earlier. Twin beds with faded quilts, dusty shelves lined with children's books, a toy chest in the corner, closed but not locked. It was preserved like a shrine or a museum exhibit of loss. "No one slept here since they disappeared?" she asked Diana Henderson, who had returned from Boston upon hearing about the locket. Diana shook her head. "My mother refused to change anything, said they might come back and need their room exactly as they left it." Bailey nodded, making notes. At 38, she had been a deputy when the twins vanished, but remembered the case vividly. Now, as sheriff, she approached it with fresh eyes and 5 years of additional experience. "Tell me about this," she said, holding up an evidence bag containing the tarnished locket. Diana stared at it, confusion evident. "I've never seen it before. It's not something we gave the children." "Could your parents have given it to them?" "Possibly, though it doesn't seem like something they would choose. My father is practical, not sentimental, and my mother—" Diana hesitated. "She was always very particular about gifts. Everything had to have a purpose." Bailey made another note. "We've sent it to the state lab. They might be able to tell us how long it was in that pipe." "Why would it be in the kitchen pipe?" Diana asked, the question that had been plaguing everyone. "The children's bathroom was upstairs, and they rarely spent time in the kitchen. My mother was territorial about her cooking space." It was a good question, one of many surrounding the discovery. Bailey had assembled a small team to revisit every aspect of the original investigation. Witness statements were being re-examined. The house was being methodically searched again. Even the forest was receiving renewed attention, with ground-penetrating radar brought in to search for disturbed earth. Caleb Murray had been interviewed multiple times, his discovery making him an unexpected key figure in the investigation. "I'd like to look at the pipes again," he told Bailey on the third day. "Something about the configuration doesn't make sense." "What do you mean?" Bailey asked. "The kitchen sink drain doesn't connect directly to the main sewer line like it should. There's an unusual diversion in the system, something I noticed while working on the clog." With permission granted, Caleb returned to the farmhouse. Henry watched silently as the young plumber traced the path of the pipes from the kitchen, through the walls, and into the basement. "See here?" Caleb pointed to a junction where newer PVC connected to the ancient cast iron. This modification isn't standard. Someone rerouted this section deliberately. House this old. Plumbing's been modified dozens of times, Henry replied dismissively. Nothing unusual about that. But Caleb persisted. The unusual part is where this diverted section leads, not to the main drain, but toward the interior wall that separates the basement from the crawl space. Henry's expression hardened. You're overstepping, son. You were hired to fix a clog, not investigate my house. Bailey, who had accompanied Caleb, stepped forward. Actually, Mr. Henderson, we have a warrant to examine the entire property, including all plumbing and structural modifications. That same afternoon, forensic technicians confirmed what Caleb suspected. The kitchen pipes had been deliberately rerouted at some point in the past decade. More disturbing was their discovery inside another section of pipe. Crude symbols scratched into the metal from the inside. Almost like someone used a nail or wire to carve them, the technician explained, showing Bailey photographs. Could be random damage, but they appear deliberate, arrows pointing downward and what might be letters. Meanwhile, Diana had been spending time with her mother, trying to make sense of Ruth's increasingly erratic statements. She keeps talking about forest friends, Diana told Bailey. Says they've been watching the house for generations, that they take the special ones to protect them. Has she always had these delusions? Bailey asked. Diana hesitated. She's had episodes throughout her life. After I left home, my father said they got worse. She was diagnosed with a form of schizophrenia in her 50s, but often refused medication. Dad managed her condition as best he could. This new information cast the case in a different light. Bailey requested Ruth's medical records, which revealed a pattern of paranoid episodes dating back decades, often focused on the forest surrounding the property. The trees have eyes, she had told one psychiatrist years earlier. They choose who belongs with them. Mrs. Abernathy, the neighbor who had reported seeing a black van the night of the disappearance, was interviewed again. This time, her recollection included new details. It wasn't just the van, she said, her aged hands fidgeting in her lap. There was something else I didn't mention before, didn't want folks thinking I was losing my mind. What was it? Bailey prompted gently. That night before the van, I saw Ruth walking near the forest edge. Middle of the storm she was, in just her nightgown. Thought it strange her being out in such weather, but figured it wasn't my business. This revelation prompted Bailey to request a search of the attic, where Ruth kept old family records and keepsakes. Among musty boxes and forgotten furniture, they discovered a locked chest. The key, when requested, was reluctantly provided by Henry. Inside lay Mr. Flopsy, the twin stuffed rabbit, carefully repaired. Its torn ear had been sewn back on with precise stitches. But more significant was what they found inside the rabbit itself. The stuffing had been partially removed to create a small hiding place containing a child's diary. The entries, written in Lila's careful handwriting, documented strange occurrences in the weeks before their disappearance. July 17th. Grandma took us to meet her friends in the woods today. She said not to tell Grandpa. They were strange, talked funny, made Jonah scared. July 23rd. Heard Grandma and Grandpa fighting about her medicine. She threw it away again, said the forest needs her clear-headed. August 10th. Grandma talks to the trees at night. Saw her from our window. She brings them gifts, little bundles of herbs and hair. August 14th. Grandma says the forest has chosen us. Says we're special like she is. Jonah doesn't want to go. I'm scared too. The final entry, dated August 15th, 2017, the day before they vanished, contained a single line. Grandma says tonight we must join them. She's coming for us after Grandpa falls asleep. The diary prompted an immediate confrontation with Ruth, now under medical supervision at the local hospital. Her mental state fluctuated between complete detachment and startling lucidity. The forest protects its own, she insisted during one clear moment. I had to save them from what was coming, had to keep them safe. Safe from what, Mrs. Henderson? Bailey asked, From the end. It's all ending soon. The forest knows. It always knows. Henry, when presented with the diary, broke down. His weathered face crumpled as he sank into a chair in the sheriff's office. "I tried so hard to protect them," he whispered. "All these years, keeping her stable, watching for signs she was slipping again. I never thought she'd harm the children." "Did you know what happened that night?" Bailey pressed. Henry's silence was answer enough. If this story has kept you entertained, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more mysteries. The investigation accelerated after Henry's tacit admission. With a team of specialists, Bailey returned to the farmhouse, focusing on the basement and its unusual plumbing configuration. Using specialized equipment, they detected a hollow space behind what appeared to be a solid wall, a space that didn't appear on any house plans. "There's definitely something back there," the technician confirmed, pointing to the imaging screen. "A room of some kind." The wall, when examined closely, revealed nearly invisible seams, a false wall constructed to look like part of the original foundation. It took hours of careful work to locate the hidden mechanism, a section of pipe that, when rotated, released a latch within the wall itself. The narrow passage beyond was dark and damp, lit only by the beams of police flashlights. It extended about 15 feet before opening into a small room, no more than 8 feet square. What they found inside stopped them cold. The space contained a small cot, a bucket, some books, and toys. On a makeshift shelf sat canned goods and bottled water. In one corner, a crude plumbing setup connected to the household system, explaining the unusual configuration Caleb had discovered. Most telling were the walls, covered with childish drawings showing a house, trees with faces, and 2 stick figures labeled Lila and Jonah. But the room was empty. Whoever had occupied it was gone. Henry, confronted with this discovery, finally broke his silence completely. His confession, recorded in the sheriff's office, revealed the horrifying truth. "Ruth has had episodes all her life," he began, his voice hollow. "Usually I could manage them with her medication. But that summer, she stopped taking it without me knowing, started talking about the forest again, about entities that lived there, watching us." He described how Ruth's condition deteriorated rapidly that August. She became convinced something catastrophic was coming, an apocalypse of some kind. Said the forest had chosen the twins to be saved because they were special like her. On the night of the storm, Henry had taken sleeping pills, something he rarely did, but the stress of managing Ruth's decline had exhausted him. He awoke briefly to the sound of the back door closing, but drifted back to sleep. "When I realized they were missing the next morning, I searched everywhere," he continued. "Then I found small footprints leading into the forest, 3 sets, Ruth's and the twins." Henry had followed them nearly a mile to a small clearing where he found Ruth sitting alone, singing softly. When questioned, she claimed the forest friends had taken the children to safety. Henry, frantic, continued searching until he found Jonah huddled beneath a fallen tree, terrified and confused. "But Lila was gone," Henry whispered, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I searched for hours, called her name until my voice gave out. She had vanished completely." The most horrifying revelation followed. Henry had brought Jonah back to the house, but kept him hidden in the secret room. "I couldn't let anyone know I'd found him," Henry explained. "Ruth was convinced the forest people had chosen the twins. If she knew Jonah was back, she'd try again, and I couldn't risk having him taken away by authorities, not when Lila was still missing. I thought if I kept him safe, I could keep searching for his sister." "You kept a child in a hidden room for 5 years?" Bailey asked, incredulous. Henry nodded, shame evident in every line of his face. "At first it was just until I found Lila. Then days became weeks, and weeks became months. The longer it went on, the harder it became to explain what I'd done." According to Henry, Jonah had initially begged to be released, but over time, the traumatized child had accepted his circumstances. Henry brought him books, toys, food, tried to make his confinement bearable while continuing the search for Lila. The locket was Jonah's idea, Henry continued. He found it among Ruth's things when I brought him to her room during one of her hospital stays. He put the photo inside, wrote the note, said if we put it somewhere, it might be found someday. Someone would help us. "Where is Jonah now?" Bailey demanded. "Safe," Henry replied. When Ruth's condition worsened last month, I moved him to a cabin I own near the Canadian border. I was afraid she might remember, might find the hidden room. Within hours, state police located the cabin and found Jonah Henderson, now 13 years old, pale from limited sunlight, smaller than average for his age, but alive. His parents, reunited with their son after 5 agonizing years, could barely comprehend the reality of his return or the horror of his captivity. Jonah's account of that night filled in the final pieces of the puzzle. Ruth had come to their room during the storm, telling them the forest friends were waiting to protect them from the coming end of the world. She'd led them into the woods to the clearing, where she performed what Jonah described as a ceremony, speaking in strange words to the surrounding trees. Lila was scared but trying to be brave, Jonah recalled, his voice soft from years of limited conversation. "I was crying." Then there was a bright flash of lightning, and Grandma screamed and fell down. When she got up, she seemed confused. She wandered away, leaving us alone. The twins had tried to find their way back to the house, but became separated in the darkness and driving rain. "I heard Lila calling for me," Jonah said, tears welling in his eyes. Then her voice just stopped. "I hid under a fallen tree until Grandpa found me the next morning." As for the hidden room, Jonah explained that Grandpa had told him it was the only way to keep him safe, from Grandma, from the forest friends, and from people who wouldn't understand. "He promised we'd find Lila together," Jonah said. "He went out searching every day, showed me maps of where he'd looked, said once we found her, we could all be together again." The revelation stunned the community. Henry Henderson was arrested and charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and obstruction of justice. Ruth was committed to a psychiatric facility, her condition too severe for her to fully comprehend what had happened. The search for Lila Henderson resumed with renewed urgency. Teams combed the forest more thoroughly than ever before, using advanced technology unavailable 5 years earlier. Diana and Robert, despite their divorce, presented a united front, appearing together at press conferences to plead for information about their daughter. Jonah, after medical evaluation and the beginning of therapy, insisted his sister was still alive. "I would know if she wasn't," he told Bailey. "Twins can feel these things." 1 month after Jonah's discovery, searchers found a child's shoe near a creek 5 miles into the forest, a pink sneaker in Lila's size, preserved under layers of silt and stone. Not far away, they discovered a small cave entrance, partially obscured by vegetation. The investigation continues, the outcome uncertain. The old farmhouse stands empty now, its secrets partially revealed, but not fully told. As for the locket that started it all, it remains in evidence, a small silver beacon that, after 5 long years, finally brought light to the darkness. Jonah Henderson sleeps in a real bed now, no longer hidden away in a secret room or remote cabin. Each night before sleeping, he whispers the same words into the darkness. "I'm still looking for you, Lila. I won't stop until we find you." What do you think the message "help" means? Is it from the twins or someone else? Comment below. The forest surrounding Millbrook had always held secrets. Local legends spoke of hikers who entered but never returned, of strange lights glimpsed between ancient trunks, of voices calling in the dead of night. Most residents dismissed these tales as small-town folklore until the Henderson twins vanished, and one returned with stories of forest friends, and ceremonies performed in midnight clearings. 5 weeks after Jonah's discovery, Caleb Murray found himself drawn back to the old farmhouse. The police had concluded their investigation of the property, and Diana Henderson had asked him to winterize the plumbing before listing the house for sale. "No one in the family can bear to live there now," she had explained, her voice tight with emotion. "Too many painful memories." The house stood silent and empty, autumn sunlight filtering through dusty windows. Caleb moved through the rooms, noting how quickly abandonment had taken hold. Dust gathering on surfaces, cobwebs forming in corners, the persistent smell of disuse permeating everything. In the basement, he examined the false wall that had hidden Jonah for 5 years. The police had removed sections for evidence, leaving the hidden room exposed, a stark reminder of the disturbing secret the house had contained. As Caleb worked on the main water line, he noticed something odd about the pipe configuration leading to the former hidden room. Unlike the kitchen pipes, which had been rerouted years ago, these showed signs of very recent modifications, perhaps within the past few months. "That's strange," he muttered, following the newer sections. They led to a corner of the basement he hadn't examined before, where the foundation met bedrock. Using his flashlight, he inspected the area more closely, finding subtle tool marks on the stone wall. Curiosity piqued, he tapped the wall with his wrench, listening for variations in sound that might indicate hollow spaces beyond. Near the floor, he detected a difference, not as pronounced as the false wall had been, but noticeable to a trained ear. Caleb hesitated, then called Sheriff Bailey. "I think there might be another hidden space," he explained. "Different construction, more integrated with the foundation, but definitely artificial." Bailey arrived with deputies and equipment. The section of wall, when carefully removed, revealed not a room but a narrow tunnel, roughly 3 feet in diameter, reinforced with timber supports and extending downward at a gentle angle. "It's like a mine shaft," one deputy observed, shining his flashlight into the darkness. "Where do you think it leads?" "Only one way to find out," Bailey replied, radioing for additional personnel and equipment. The tunnel, they soon discovered, extended nearly 400 yards, gradually descending before leveling out beneath the forest floor. The construction was old, decades at least, with sections repaired more recently. It eventually terminated at a circular chamber roughly 15 feet across, supported by timbers and containing what appeared to be an abandoned living space, a small cot, storage containers, a camp stove, and other survival equipment. Most significantly, the chamber had another exit, a ladder leading up to a trapdoor disguised as forest floor, opening into a dense section of woods approximately a quarter mile from the house. "This wasn't built by Henry," Bailey concluded, examining the older construction. "This has been here much longer." "Prohibition era, maybe?" suggested a deputy. "Smugglers used tunnels like this to move alcohol?" Bailey shook her head. "This goes into the forest, not toward town or water. And look at these." She pointed to markings carved into the support beams, symbols similar to those found inside the kitchen pipes, but more elaborate. Concentric circles, stylized trees, and what appeared to be crude human figures with elongated limbs. "Ruth's forest friends," Bailey murmured. "But who actually made these?" Further investigation revealed that the tunnel system had been in the Henderson family for generations. County records showed Ruth's grandfather had owned the property since 1903, and local newspaper archives contained veiled references to the family's peculiar practices and unusual interest in forest folklore. Diana Henderson, when shown photographs of the tunnel and chamber, appeared genuinely shocked. "I had no idea," she insisted. "I grew up in that house and never knew this existed." "Your mother never mentioned anything about underground spaces or family secrets," Bailey pressed. Diana hesitated. She had stories, legends about forest guardians that protected special people. "I always thought they were just fairy tales she made up. As a child, I'd hear her talking about the old ways with my grandmother, but they'd stop whenever I entered the room. The investigation took an unexpected turn when forensic analysts discovered recent DNA evidence in the underground chamber, DNA matching Lila Henderson. She was down there, Bailey told Diana and Robert during a tense meeting at the sheriff's office, within the last 6 months, possibly more recently. "Are you saying she's been alive all this time?" Robert asked, voice breaking. "Living under the house?" "Not continuously," Bailey clarified. "The evidence suggests periodic occupation. There are indications someone has been using the tunnel to move between the house and the forest." The implications were staggering. If Lila had survived the night in the forest 5 years ago, who had found her? Who had kept her hidden, occasionally returning her to the underground chamber? Jonah, now adjusting to life with his father in a new home across town, provided another piece of the puzzle during a therapy session. "Grandma told us about the forest people when we were little," he recalled. "Said they were her real family, that they'd been watching over our family for generations. Said they needed new blood sometimes, young people who could understand them." When asked if he'd ever seen these forest people, Jonah grew uncomfortable. "Just shadows," he said finally. "Voices sometimes at night. Grandma said they only show themselves to the chosen ones." As autumn deepened toward winter, the search for Lila intensified. The discovery of the tunnel network prompted authorities to expand their search parameters, focusing on the area surrounding the trapdoor exit. Thermal imaging drones swept the forest, detecting several anomalous heat signatures deep within the woods. Ground teams investigated these locations, discovering evidence of recent human activity: fire pits, crude shelters, and in one location, a child's drawing scratched into tree bark showing a house with a tunnel beneath it. Then came the breakthrough. A hunter, having heard about the search on local news, reported an unusual structure he'd spotted 5 miles into the forest. A small cabin built into the side of a ravine, partially concealed by vegetation and seemingly abandoned. When authorities reached the location, they found the cabin empty but recently occupied. Inside, a familiar silver locket lay on a rough wooden table, identical to the one found in the pipes, but undamaged by water or time. Inside was another photograph of the twins and another note, this one reading, "Coming home soon." Forensic analysis confirmed the handwriting matched the samples from Lila's childhood diary. The implication was clear. Lila Henderson was alive, moving through the forest, aware of her brother's discovery and planning some kind of return. But who had kept her all these years? The question haunted investigators as they maintained surveillance on the cabin and surrounding area. Motion-activated cameras were installed, capturing only wildlife and, on one occasion, a hooded figure too distant to identify clearly. Ruth Henderson, during a period of unusual clarity at the psychiatric facility, provided disturbing context. "The forest has always provided sanctuary to those who understand its ways," she told Bailey during an interview. "My grandmother taught me, as her grandmother taught her. We've always been the bridge between worlds." "What worlds, Mrs. Henderson?" Bailey asked. Ruth smiled, a distant look in her eyes. "The seen and unseen, the people of town and the people of forest. They've been here since before Europeans arrived, living differently, seeing differently. They take in those who belong with them." "Are you saying someone took Lila? People living in the forest?" "Not took," Ruth corrected. "Saved, protected. They recognized she was special. Like me, like my grandmother. They'll return her when the time is right." While psychiatrists dismissed Ruth's statements as delusional, anthropologists consulting on the case noted connections to obscure regional folklore, stories of isolated communities that had retreated deep into the forests of New England during colonial times, maintaining minimal contact with outside society for generations. "It's not impossible," one expert explained. There are documented cases of small, isolated groups living undetected in wilderness areas for decades, even in modern times. They develop their own customs, beliefs, even language variations. As winter settled over Millbrook, the search for Lila continued, hampered by snow and freezing temperatures. Jonah, convinced his sister would return, insisted on participating despite his parents' concerns. "She's waiting for the right moment," he told Bailey. "She'll come when she feels safe." Caleb Murray, whose discovery had unraveled the mystery, found himself unable to leave it behind. Though his plumbing work at the farmhouse was complete, he volunteered with search teams, his familiarity with hidden spaces and structural anomalies proving valuable. During one such search, Caleb and Jonah found themselves paired together, checking a series of markers left by previous teams. As they approached the edge of a frozen pond, Jonah suddenly stopped. "She's here," he whispered, looking around with wide eyes. "I can feel her." Caleb scanned the tree line, seeing nothing. "Where?" Instead of answering, Jonah cupped his hands around his mouth and called out a series of sounds. Not English, not any language Caleb recognized. The strange syllables echoed across the pond, fading into the winter stillness. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, barely visible through the bare trees on the opposite shore, a small figure emerged. A girl in oversized clothing, her hair long and tangled, watching them warily. "Lila," Jonah breathed, taking a step forward. The figure hesitated, then slowly raised her hand in greeting. Behind her, partially concealed by trees, stood taller figures, at least 3, motionless and watching. Before Caleb could radio their position, Jonah broke into a run, crossing the frozen pond toward his sister. Caleb followed, slipping on the ice, watching as the twins moved toward each other after 5 long years apart. Their reunion, 2 small figures embracing in the winter landscape, was witnessed only by Caleb and the mysterious observers at the forest's edge. By the time other search team members arrived, the watchers had vanished, leaving only Lila clinging to her brother and speaking in a mixture of English and unfamiliar words. "They kept me safe," were her first coherent sentences to authorities. "Their family, too. Ancient family. But it's time to come home now." If you're captivated by mysteries like this one, be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a comment below telling us where you're watching from. The Henderson twins' story didn't end with Lila's return, but rather entered a new chapter, one that raised as many questions as it answered. Medical examination showed Lila to be physically healthy despite her years in the wilderness. She was smaller than her brother, malnourished by conventional standards, but surprisingly robust, with unusual calluses on her hands and feet and exceptional night vision. More striking were the behavioral differences. Where Jonah had emerged from captivity timid and dependent, Lila displayed fierce independence and strange skills. She could identify every plant in the forest, predict weather changes hours in advance, and moved with uncanny silence when she chose to. Her account of the past 5 years emerged slowly through therapy sessions and conversations with her brother, the only person she fully trusted. She described being found by forest people after becoming separated from Jonah during the storm, people who lived in hidden communities deep within the woodland, maintaining minimal contact with the outside world. "They took me to their settlement," she explained, "taught me their ways, said I had the old blood, like Grandma Ruth." When asked why she hadn't tried to return home earlier, her answers were troublingly consistent with Ruth's delusions. The time wasn't right. The forest decides when someone can leave, not the person. Anthropologists and historians consulted on the case theorized that Lila had encountered descendants of mixed Native American and European ancestry who had retreated from society generations ago, preserving pre-colonial lifestyles and developing isolated cultural practices. Attempts to locate these communities proved futile. Searches based on Lila's descriptions found only abandoned camps and cold fire pits. The forest people, if they existed as she described, remained elusive, observable only on their terms. For the Henderson family, Lila's return brought both joy and challenges. Diana and Robert, despite their divorce, collaborated on their daughter's reintegration, establishing a shared custody arrangement that prioritized keeping the twins together. "They need each other," Diana explained to friends, "more than they need either of us." The twins' bond, strained by 5 years of separation, rapidly reestablished itself with an intensity that sometimes excluded others. They often spoke in a private language combining English with words Lila had learned in the forest, finishing each other's sentences and communicating through glances and gestures others couldn't interpret. Henry Henderson, awaiting trial for his role in Jonah's captivity, received an unexpected advocate in his granddaughter. Lila insisted on visiting him in custody, emerging from their first meeting with a perspective that surprised authorities. "Grandpa did what he thought was right," she told Bailey afterward. "He protected Jonah the only way he knew how. The forest would have taken him too, otherwise." Ruth remained institutionalized, her condition complicated by her granddaughter's return. During their supervised visits, the two spoke intently in low voices, Ruth occasionally lucid enough to ask coherent questions about the Forrest family. Caleb Murray found his life intertwined with the Henderson mystery in ways he never expected. His plumbing business thrived due to his newfound local fame, but more significantly, he developed a friendship with the twins, especially Lila, who sought his help in understanding the modern world she had missed. "Everything moves so fast out here," she told him during one of their conversations. "In the forest, time follows different rules." The farmhouse itself, despite Diana's initial plans to sell it, remained in the family. The tunnel network was sealed for safety, but the property's connection to the forest, and whatever secrets it still contained, proved too significant to abandon entirely. "It's part of our history," Diana acknowledged, "for better or worse." As spring arrived in Millbrook, bringing new growth to the forest that had both taken and protected Lila, the community gradually adjusted to the twins' unusual story. Tourists occasionally drove past the farmhouse, hoping to glimpse the children who had lived such extraordinary experiences, but the media frenzy eventually subsided. For Lila and Jonah, now 14, life established a new normal, though one punctuated by Lila's occasional distant gaze toward the forest edge. During those moments, Jonah would take his sister's hand, anchoring her to the present while acknowledging the past that had shaped them both. "Do you miss them?" he asked her once, as they sat on the farmhouse porch watching the tree line. Lila considered the question, twisting the silver locket she now wore openly around her neck. Inside, she had placed a new photograph, the twins reunited, alongside the original. "Sometimes," she admitted, "they understood things about the world that most people have forgotten. But they knew I belonged with you. That's why they let me come back." "Do you think they're watching us now?" Lila smiled, pointing to a distant section of the forest where nothing appeared visibly different to ordinary eyes. "They're always watching, their family too, in their way." Whether Lila's forest family was real or a coping mechanism developed by a traumatized child remains debated among those familiar with the case. The only certainty is that something or someone kept her alive and relatively well during those 5 missing years. Sheriff Bailey maintains an open file on the case, particularly regarding the identity of the figures glimpsed during Lila's recovery. Trail cameras occasionally capture unusual images, shadows moving where no people should be, strange lights between trees on moonless nights, and once, a child-sized handprint left on a camera lens miles from any hiking trail. The Henderson twins continue their interrupted childhood, carrying experiences that set them apart from their peers. Jonah still wakes from nightmares about the hidden room, while Lila sometimes sleepwalks toward the forest, drawn by voices only she can hear. Their story, of disappearance, separation, captivity, and reunion has become part of Millbrook's identity, a reminder that even in the modern world mysteries remain, waiting to be discovered in the most unexpected places. Like a message in a locket, trapped in ancient pipes for years before finally delivering its plea for help. What do you think will happen next in our story? Share your theories below.